Today I'm chatting with Mark Kerr. Mark is one of the OGs at UFC, one of the original, you were prior to UFC, you were in all the original, big MMA productions where before MMA was kind of a thing, I had the pleasure to know Hoist Gracie and Chuck Liddell and Tito and some other guys that came pretty early. And you're kind of right in the middle of that series.
Yeah, I'm kind of sandwiched in between. It's like I hadn't realized this until recently that I did UFC 14 and 15, and those were the last two four-man tournaments that the UFC did. And then they started doing individual bouts after that. So
for some people that maybe don't know, there's original tournaments, and you'll have to educate me yourself as well. But I know the original tournaments were Hoist fought in. It was 8-man tournament. Yep. And then the next one was 16. So you'd have to have 3 fights in a night, 4 fights in a night.
They're brutal.
Which today would be unheard of, So at the time you're starting, you don't just show up and well prepared for one individual that you've been thinking about and training for 2 or 3 months. You're showing up, and you have any number of people.
And,
that
exactly.
To fix,
And they had alternates too. So there's no way to prepare for it other than just training and preparing for a mixed martial arts event, And back then, the training wasn't as clear as it is now. There's still variables of like, how do you train for something that's longer than anything exists? It's not a boxing round. It's not a wrestling round. It was the Wild Wild West. I mean, it really was.
There's a level of bravery. I've thought about this, and watching those. I've rewatched the first 4 UFC events. And there's a level of bravery to that where you really didn't know what you were walking into at that time.
Yeah.
As you said to be prepared for anything you could imagine, and some things maybe you couldn't imagine.
Yeah.
What did that feel like at the time? Did that feel normal to you in some way, or?
Oh my God! Like looking back on it, I can actually appreciate a lot more what I did than in the moment. But it created. It actually brings out just a different level. For me, I remember it brought out a different level as a human being, like very primitive, very reptilian type of, like just survival. And, I always remember looking at the early UFCs and seeing the boxer with one glove on and one, it's like that's how far back, like he didn't know what the hell he was getting into. Right.
Yeah.
And so, looking back on it, it's one of those where I prepared the best I could, and it still wasn't what I expected it to be. It really brought something out in me that I didn't know I had. The reference I always use now is like, back then, even now, if you're going to put like me and somebody else in a room and say, one of you need to come out, I know I'm coming out. That's what it woke up in me. Is that real, true, genuine feeling of like, I can survive any of those kind of encounters.
What was your early training like? So you have really strong wrestling background going into this. Yeah. And, for instance, Tito Ortiz has told me stories where, when he's training, he's in Southern California, and he's got to drive, an hour to go to the kickboxing gym, and an hour and a half to go to a different gym. There's no MMA gyms at the time because MMA was such an early thing.
Yeah.
So, today you have these, full, say, Extreme Couture or, Kill Cliff Fight Club or Jackson Wink, things like places like this that are, integrated MMA gyms. He'd say you have to drive an hour and a half over here and then drive an hour over there. And so what was that like for you?
A lot of what was going on, and I was in Arizona when I started fighting, and a lot of what was going on at the time, a lot of senseis didn't want anything to do with this because it really genuinely threatened their existence. So any of the spaces that I was able to train in was after hours. It'd be like 9:00 at night. I could rent out a dojo after everybody had left.
Wow.
It was literally that bad. And even to the point where when I was going out to, I ended up getting involved with Beverly Hills Jiu-Jitsu Club just by chance. And that even had an element. I was there Friday and Saturday. Like, it started out as every other weekend, and then it started pretty consistently where I'd go out there and I would train over the weekend because I had access to Boss Root, and I had access to Marco Huaz, Pedro Izzo, and Oleg Tarov. And combined, they had so much experience fighting that I didn't have. But the crazy part was, when I was teaching wrestling, you had all the Brazilian jiu-jitsu guys that were in California. They would sit on the side. They wouldn't participate. And the second that the normal little class of wrestlers left, they would draw all the blinds and lock the doors and go, okay, show me some wrestling stuff, right? And that's how archaic it was back then. That's how separated it was. There wasn't extreme couture. There wasn't a unified way to do this.
Wow.
Yeah. Isn't it crazy?
So you had some people are trying to be pretty tight with information, or some people want nothing to do with it because, as you said, it threatens their little stronghold within their reach. To sort of be, I don't want to say it in a negative way, but to sort of be exposed, or for everything to come to light of which things are more dominant, or which skill sets are more useful.
And you know what? Part of it, and I firmly believe this even today, is that like Machida, right? Like that type of karate, or that type of point, or that elements in that can be used. Just like in karate or kempo or kung fu, you can take elements from that and you can utilize them in mixed martial arts. But everyone knows this now. That's not enough just by itself. It takes that collaborative part. And I was saying it last night, like Bruce Lee, he had it, man. He really had the concept that what he was doing was not enough. He needed to branch out and learn all these other disciplines to be complete, and I think that's, the UFC mixed martial arts has exposed so many, they almost were like urban legends. Like, oh, if you're 6'5", 900 pounds, you can beat anybody up. It's like, no. You can have a guy that's 180 pounds. Hoist was beat up guys, twice his size.
I think Hoist fought a man that was something like 600 pounds.
Big sumo guy.
He was 180 or 182.
I think. Because it shattered that belief that everyone was holding on to. That, like, if you're bigger, you were tougher, and if you're a 10th degree karate guy, you're the toughest guy in the room.
What's your perspective of how important size is? I totally agree with what you're saying about technique. And I myself, when I started training, I was 300 pounds, and I got beat up by smaller guys. Every training session, you get beat up by smaller guys because everybody was smaller than me. So no matter what their size or talent level, they were still me up good. And I joke, but it's also true. Like, the first year you get... you just get beat up, and then after a while you get tired of getting beat up the same way. So you learn how to defend this thing, this thing, that thing. So my defense got really good in year 2, and then offense is getting a lot better in year 3 now that you can defend a lot of things. And now I feel like a lot more emboldened, or you don't feel like you're overextending or putting yourself in a vulnerable spot to be more offensive. But you and I are both bigger guys. You said in your early parts of your career, you're 270 something, 275 when you're walking in, and you look like a beast. You look so fit and big.
Part of that was and again, it's just not the complete understanding of what I was walking into. So I kind of bought into, the bigger I was, the more chance I had, whatever I encountered, right, that I was going to be able to be successful. And the problem with that is there's a balance, right? There's a trade-off. My trade-off is, okay, I'm going to carry that muscle mass. Man, I have a really, really small gas tank, right? And so there's that balancing point. So what I was saying last night is that, I actually settled around 245 was ideal. I could be strong enough where I can overpower somebody, but I wasn't carrying a bunch of excess mass. So my gas tank got bigger, and I could fight in longer periods. So it's this balance, and it just took time. It took time to understand what the competition level was and what I needed to do to be successful at it.
So a balanced 245. You're 245. So your ideal fight weight, folks, just get up to 245.
Yeah, it's now if you look at the guys that are, you know, Pereira who just won. Like, I mean, that's like that is a fighter. Like he's got like body type, you know, all of that. Like that he could go for. You can go for a while.
Yeah, Alex Pereira, he's long, he's quick, hell of a kickboxer.
Oh, unbelievable.
His grappling's legit, grappling solid, hell of a kickboxer, amazing kickboxer.
Yeah.
And you're giving people a real tough time.
Oh, unbelievable. And, you know, it's this ebb and flow, you know, through mixed martial arts, through the history of it, where, you know, at one point, it was just all jiu-jitsu guys who were starting to dominate because no one really no one really understood what that was. Right. And then you have like wrestlers that kind of get in there and, you know, hybrid wrestlers like Henderson and Couture and, you know, and then, you know, you have, you know, this evolution. So everything's just kind of evolving, you know, and striking right now is just such a huge element to it. You know, it really is.
Yeah. They're just a toughness, you know, interested in your take on this. I think a lot of people today are just soft. There's just a general thought about society that, which is a great thing for the few people that are not soft, that, you know, never in history, I'm not aware. We were looking at, you know, I have a lot of marble statues of various conquerors and whatnot in my weight gym. And I'm not aware of any time in history where the men were so soft, where you couldn't, you wouldn't have survived in a lot. Today you wouldn't survive in a lot of places with the way people are in Western culture at the moment. So, you know, you mentioned Dan Henderson, and shout out to Dan. I met Dan, we did an interview together a couple of years ago, and I've talked a couple of times since then, but the guy got into a car accident that day. Long story short, his wife says, you know, hey, after we did an interview, he didn't say a word, not a word of complaint. He texted me, he said, you know, hey, I might be just a couple minutes late. And like, you know, all right, if you need to, if it's not a serious thing, okay. Didn't tell me anything, says, might be just a couple minutes late. I'm sorry. He shows up. We do our interview. We're sitting around chatting afterwards for maybe an hour or something. And his wife says, Dan, you mentioned to him how your day was earlier. And, I was with so-and-so, and we were in this like off-road car racing thing. Yeah. And the guy crashes the car. He's got a broken tooth. He's a newly broken tooth. Smacked his head. He's got a lump on his head. He's got a newly broken tooth in his mouth. He didn't say a word about any of it, you know. Wasn't going to say anything at all. Anything at all. Yeah. He's just that type of guy, you know. And you know, he's an older, retired guy now, but he's still got that kind of just toughness or grit about him. He's just that type of guy.
The word that has always defined Dan in my mind is grit.
Yeah,
is just absolute grit. You know, and some of those guys that I fought against that had that grit, oh my God, they were just the hardest. You knew going into it that it was going to hurt. It was going to hurt. And you had to be in a mindset where you're okay with that, right? It's a weird phenomenon when you're out there and you take damage from somebody else. You almost feed on it, you know, because for me it would be you punch me in the face, I would get this. Well, guess what? I'm going to punch you 10 times in the face, right? And that's Dan. Dan had just grit, you know, just an unbelievable determination, you know.
So, you know, a thought or a question of the evolution of that sport. We're recording this, recently had UFC 300. You were in UFC 14 and 15, yeah? So you won the tournaments in 14 and 15. So it's sometime later now. And my impression is there are some people today that are, you know, maybe more well-rounded athletes, that they grew up looking at this, they've been training since they were young, that maybe they have higher level technical skills in some ways, they're better overall athletes from, you know, conditioning programs or training programs that are more optimized. But, you know, the early stages, the point that where you were competing, those were it was a different type of person that just tough. You know, I think of a more sophisticated word, but just tough. It's brave and tough.
That kind of encapsulates what it was. Because you know, part of it is like you know, there's a dark room and you're going to walk into it. There's a certain level of courage, or like, hey, there's something in there, right? It's like, that's what you're walking into. And it just takes a guy with that kind of moxie, that kind of toughness to go, I'll go in and see what it is. You know, no, and you just went ahead in doing something without a complete understanding of it, but without a fear of it. You know, you're just moving forward. And that's one of the things where, you know, like going over to Japan and fighting in Pride and stuff, that was like another level of like what the possibilities of the sport is. You know, when you go into a live venue and there's 50,000 people there and it's just you and another guy fighting, it's like a whole different paradigm, because you feel more like a gladiator. You really do. I mean, you feel like you're, you know, conquering, walking into like these are the toughest guy from your village and the toughest guy from the other village, and you're fighting out in the ring, and whoever wins gets, you know, X. You know, it's this incredible feeling.
The village happens to be a whole continent, and maybe toughest guy from this continent.
That's the reality of it, right?
It's a big village.
Yeah, it's
a lot of tough guys.
A lot of tough guys, and you put your champion up, and you know, it's this crazy mentality that I had about what it was, and the Japanese culture supported that. They completely supported that. You know, some of the venues, like they have what's called the Budokan, which is it was the Emperor of Japan's private sumo arena, and I did an event there, which it's like holy ground. It's like sacred ground, and it's just this incredible historical, you know, perspective of, especially culturally, it's just a little bit different how they view it.
My main coach, the guy that I've got my belts jiu-jitsu in for, is Jake Shields, who was, you know, one of the best grapplers during his time in MMA. He's an amazing grappler, but during his time in MMA, you know, is considered maybe the best you know, grappler in martial arts.
Yeah. And it's not a wrestler, it's different. It's a wrestler's a wrestler. A grappler is all that incorporation of all those holds, arm bars, chokes, stars. It's a different concept, right?
Jiu-jitsu plus wrestling.
Yeah. It's more of a whole term, right? Yeah.
Jake made a comment. I seen a quote from him, and I've talked with him about it. He said soon after his retirement, somebody asked him a question. Well, you know, why did you choose to retire? And he said, well, you know, he was a multi-time champion at Strikeforce, which got incorporated into UFC later. So he's a multi-time champion, and he said, well, you know, if you want to be a champion in that sport, you have to be willing to kill your opponent, and you have to be willing to die in that cage. And he said, if either of those things aren't true, then maybe you should think about retiring.
Yeah.
And you know, what was your perspective at that time? As you know, it's a different rule set, different time culturally. What was your perspective in that sense of you know, willingness to you know, hurt people or be hurt, or just general philosophies of the time that they helped you maybe seem normal to you? I'm not asking you to say something grandiose.
No.
How were you thinking about it at the time?
It's gosh, man, you know, he's right. I mean, you really have to have that kind of perspective when you're in there, because if you don't, and again, like I said, you know, for me personally, I developed something I didn't know I had, which was that, you know, survival instinct. Basically, it's like everyone knows they have it, but until it's brought out, it's a completely, you know, for me, I didn't know how deep it ran. Right? I didn't know how strong my will was to get in that situation and want to be the victor, you know? So, you know, back when I started fighting that feeling that I first got, I didn't understand what it was. And I developed the like mentality of, no matter what, I'm going to hurt you. I'm going to hurt you to the point where I'm going to, you know, it's one of those where I'm going to break you. That was the mentality of being in the ring. I'm going to put so much pressure on you. I'm going to, you know, do whatever I need to do to break your will to survive. Because I know my survival instinct's stronger, right? It's this, you know, I didn't know all this was inside me to begin with. So when it started coming out, I was like, holy cow, man. It's, I know it's competitive. I just didn't know to the level that it rose to.
Do you think, I spend a lot of time thinking about like evolutionary psychology, and I've used some of those thoughts an awful lot in business, and particularly in investing. I'm not a very trendy person. I kind of don't give a shit what the next big trend is or whatever's popular today or this month or whatever. I really don't care. I think, well, if something's been popular for 3,000 years, probably it'll still be popular. Probably a couple more years, the shit will probably still be working. So, and not to get far off topic, but a way that I've applied that in business at different times is you'll see, say like in 2020, you'll see 2009 was that way, 2020 was that way, where people are truly hysterical in their assessments of the marketplace and the stock market specifically, or real estate markets. And I think, well, if energy companies are extraordinarily discounted, like probably electricity is going to be popular in the future.
Yeah,
it's probably going to remain popular to like heat your home in the winter.
Yeah.
So I think, who are the companies that are going to profit if it remains popular to heat your home? Who has to get paid in the supply chain for that to be true?
Yeah.
And sometimes you can buy assets like that, and 25 cents on the dollar of what they'll be worth in a couple of years. So those are amazing moments, Regarding that human instinct applied to in a fight context, I kind of think, and I don't have the experience that you do from that perspective. Obviously, you're in a very unique position in the world, but it seems to me that a lot of the will to survive or some of those stronger human instincts is kind of in everybody. But going back to the comment I made earlier, I think some people, they never put themselves in a situation that requires any bravery, or there's even a risk that they might be stressed out or something, And, unless you're in those challenging situations, there's moments in my life that I'm proud of that, if I wasn't put in a situation, I wouldn't have understood like, oh, I dealt with that quite well. I remember there's a time I was swimming by the Great Barrier Reef in Australia with a woman, and there's a 2-meter shark right next to us, right next to her. And in my head, for your whole life, you think it's your job. For me, at least, I think it's my job to protect my girl. It's like that's the main thing. You're supposed to protect your girl. And I didn't think about it a whole lot. Thankfully, I liked that girl. Thankfully for her, but. I swam towards the shark, and I thought I'm going to go fight a shark in the water.
Exactly.
Now I was scared. I remember feeling like, but
you did
a moment
anyways.
after I moved towards the shark, and the shark swam away, and that was great. And maybe half a dozen little stories like that or anecdotes like that, but. You could say whatever words ahead of time. I think a lot of guys, whatever they might say ahead of time, they might not behave that way in the situation. But you really don't know until you're in those situations.
Absolutely.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's one of those. Well, you said something earlier about soft, right? Like men have forgotten, what nature's built into you, right? And I have a son, and he's like, a lot of the guys just need to be punched in the face. They really do, because that's like how are you going to react? And that's what people don't know anymore, because they're never in those situations, because, life is inherently difficult. It's hard. It's one of those things where it's like, it's not easy. And I think a lot of people out there try to insulate themselves from those, situations to the point where, life is not cushy. It's not just bouncing from one pillow to another. There's difficult situations where you're in the water with the shark. What are you going to do?
What sort of man should wish to bounce from one pillow to the other and start, not challenge himself against the world a bit? No. It doesn't sound like a recipe for success.
No, it's not. It's not. It's not that every guy or every person needs to go out there and, put themselves in those situations. But if you never challenge yourself, you never realize what heights you can raise to, right? If I had been challenged by, a bunch of people in my life to do better, I would have never risen to the level that I rose to in fighting and wrestling and all the other components, but sometimes if I, for me, what I've had is I've had people in my life that have challenged me because I haven't been able to find that myself. And that's mentorship, where we talk about, like mentoring and having somebody in your life that's going to hold you accountable. Somebody that's like, hey, you can do a lot better than what you're doing, and challenge you, and you take that challenge to heart because you respect that, right?
Those are exactly the clients that I love to work with, is somebody who's doing well already, but they know they could do a lot better.
Yeah.
They're already doing, maybe they're in the 80th percentile. They're already doing very well, but you could do a lot better. I don't, half of people are below average by definition, and maybe I'm not the right person to try to, I'm not here to try to save somebody who's not trying to save themselves.
Yeah, oh God.
That's not my place
yeah.
in the world.
Yeah.
It's not what I want to do. And I get shit about that on the internet, by the way, sometimes. It's like, you're a mentor or a teacher. You're supposed to help the people that need your help the most. No, you're supposed to help yourself a bit too, if you're not willing to help yourself.
And that, oh my God, that's part of just the basic equation, right? Like the basic equation is that, in you have to have that ability to be able to want to be better than where you are, right? And again, like you said, you could have $1 gazillion in the bank and wake up and go, I could do better. I could do better in this area or that area, and challenge yourself to do better. And the same thing when you get those super elite athletes, like what motivated Jordan to continue to play at that level when he already had so much?
He had to pick artificial fights. I'm not making fun of the guy.
No.
It's a guy that I respect a lot as well. That
Yeah.
is, in my opinion, the best basketball player there ever was. But the guy literally had to pick artificial fights with people, or imagine that someone insulted him
To raise
so
to
he
that
could
level.
create a beef in his head. In the long documentary about him, there's anecdotes where they talk about this, where he's so and so said this or that about my family, or things of that nature, and the other person be like, I never said anything, and later on he'd be like, yeah, I think that's true. I don't think he ever said that. I just told myself he said that shit so I could be mad at him to
raise my level.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
That's a crazy level of.
My God. And everybody has their own little, what it is that's going to kick that thing in you, and that, like, my whole thing was, the dark room. You could throw us, me and somebody else in a room, and I'm coming out. That was like my beef, right? That was like my mentality of like, you motherfucker, doesn't matter what I have to do, I'm coming out.
Yeah, I watched your documentary from years ago, and I know there's a new documentary or movie coming out soon. Where Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, is going to play you in the movie, which I'm excited to see that. How was that? A moment that was really made me a little bit emotional watching your documentary from the past. What year was that? 2000.
2002, I believe it was released on HBO. Actually bought it and released it on HBO, which was back then. That was the place to have your movies.
Yeah, that's super cool. That's super. I don't have an HBO show yet. 20 years later. A moment that kind of stood out to me, or was a little emotional to me watching that, was you're smashing everybody. They call you the smashing machine.
Yeah.
You're smashing everybody, giving people hell. And you go to Japan to fight, and they explain this rule set, which seems kind of fuzzy.
Yeah. Oh God.
And then you get hit with a couple of illegal knees.
Yeah.
And I think to myself, like, it looks to me that from the clips they show, you're doing pretty well in that fight.
Yeah.
Things are going pretty well for you, and then you end up in an awkward position where you think you're safe by the rule set, but the other guy's not following the rule set. And there's some different languages and some other communication problems that are perhaps part of it. But I thought, I felt empathetic, where I'm like, man, that's a position to be in, where the guy's killing everybody, and then they said that's a no contest at the end.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, for me, it's like nobody cares that it's a no contest, because they only care the result in the ring, and they raise his hand in the ring, right? It's like one of those things where it's like that behind all of that was probably never said, but I looked at it and I'm like, it's not his fault. It's like, having one rules for football in New York and a different set in LA, right? So you build these reactions in, like when you're training, right? You build a reaction to throw an elbow or throw a knee or even headbutt at the, when I first started, you're allowed to headbutt, So it's hard to take those reactions out. I didn't hold Igor accountable for it. I held the Japanese accountable for it. It's like, this should have never changed it to begin with. If those are the rules, those are rules. But yeah, it didn't feel good, man. Those are hard.
It felt that way. Like I felt that, like, man, the fucking guy's doing so good, and the kind of that makes sense to me what you're saying. That if you train your brain to do something for a long period of time,
Yep.
and then they tell you the rules, some the day before or 2 days before or something, and how you're supposed to rewire your brain while you're doing everything else.
Impossible. It's just impossible. My like anybody else that's, a guy, when someone goes to smack you in the growing area, you automatically flinch and react, and that's what that was. Like position, flinch and react. He's just doing what he's trained to do. Yeah, it was not a good day.
Tell us about the new movie. You said Dwayne Johnson's playing your role in the movie.
Oh my gosh, man, it's turned out to be, all the right pieces came together. DJ and I talked, The Rock and I talked 4 years ago about doing this, and pandemic happens, Screen Actor Guild, writer strike, all this stuff just kept piling up for it not to happen. And this past October, we had a phone call, and he's like, "Hey, we're gonna go forward with this." And I was, he goes, "Once this starts heading down the tracks, there's no stopping it." And so it ends up being where a studio called A24 Studios. They're out in New York. They did a movie called Uncut Gems. They've done a bunch of really good movies. Iron Claw, movie about pro wrestlers, and they do cinema. They don't do superhero block. They do cinema. And so it's DJ playing me. Emily Blunt is playing my girlfriend at the time. Boss Rutan's playing Boss Rutan, which is awesome. I'm so happy for him. And a guy named Benny Safdie is directing it. He wrote it, and it goes into production May 21st. It's in Vancouver, and it has I think an 11-week production schedule, and then what I think, it might be released this year at the end of the year. It might be, but it's got all the right pieces. It's the, A24's budgets for movies are usually between 20 million, probably 25 million, 30 million at the most. And this is the most expensive movie that they're making.
Sweet.
So it just has all the different things. They're recreating, which is crazy. They're recreating my whole life back then. My house that was in the documentary, the ring. They've taken pictures of the watch I was wearing back then. It's so crazy. The production staff and props and stuff. I sent them a bunch of pictures of stuff, and they're recreating that time period.
So going to be a very authentic recreation of that unique period in time.
Which is it just blows my mind, sitting down with costumes and stuff. And they have this list of stuff where, what was the brand of jeans you wore during this scene? What was his shoes? What was this? And they go back, if they can't find it, they go back and they make it. Isn't that crazy? So they're recreating the 90s. Here we go. I'm going to be a fashion trend.
Good things you saved those things in plastic.
I know, right?
Good thing you saved them for 20 years.
They'll come back around in style, So, I'm excited about it. It's one of those very, very unique opportunities. And, when you take someone like Dwayne Johnson and put him, it's still even funny to say it, he's playing me. He'll be Mark Kerr, the Smashing Machine, for 11 weeks. And then he goes back to being The Rock, which is cool.
Yeah. Not a bad gig being
No.
Not worse things you could be in.
Oh my God, isn't that funny, right? There are a lot worse things you could be. A lot. So, it's one of those where, when talking with him and stuff like that, for having somebody to say to me, like Dwayne to say to me, thank you for trusting me. Thank you for allowing me to tell this story. Because it's at the time in my life, it's really a complex I'm at the height. I'm the number one ranked mixed martial artist in the world at the time. And started my career 11-0, and then just a bunch of stuff happens in my life, hedonism, self-destruction, a lot of things. If somebody hasn't seen the documentary, it's a very detailed look inside my life, so before social media.
What are your thoughts of the pressures that people deal with when you're the best in the world at something? Different people deal with that in different ways. And you touched on it with Jordan earlier of how the hell do you motivate yourself? Or how do you keep your brain on the right track to keep performing like that? And, if we look at, in modern fighting, you look at a guy like John Jones. And in respect to John Jones, I think John Jones is obviously he's an amazing fighter and maybe the best fighter that ever lived. There's a strong argument you could make.
Oh, yeah,
I think that's true. I know a lot of people that know John. I have, really nothing but respect for his skills and what he accomplished. I don't think it's a controversial thing to say. John has some questionable decisions once in a while, and he gets, he can't help but get himself in trouble once in a while, one way or another. And Dennis Rodman's that type of character from the Michael Jordan area, where Dennis Rodman's a top performer. He's there and wants to perform for the team, but in his private time, he's got to go be Dennis Rodman,
Yeah, it's...
What are your thoughts of the pressures? I think a lot of people in the public, just my 2 cents, I think a lot of people in the public have no goddamn idea what it's like. They look at somebody like Britney Spears shaves her head or something. Mm-hmm. They have no goddamn idea what it'd be like to be a teenage girl with all that pressure to be Britney Spears, or to be Dennis Rodman, or to be John Jones or Mark Kerr. There's a lot of pressure from others and yourself. How do you look at that, or how do you think of it then, or how do you think of it now?
Oh my gosh, man, that's there's not a blueprint. There's not a there isn't a pool of people you can go and talk to about how to walk through that, right? Because you have handlers, like you have agents and blah, 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 blah. But there isn't a person. What I've discovered for myself is there's people like a friend of mine, Jay Glazer, he has developed these really close relationships with a lot of football coaches and general managers and stuff like that, because the pool of people they have to talk to is really small. If you're running an NFL team, a head coach, say, who do you go talk to? It's difficult because there's not a roadmap for it. There's not a bunch of people that experience it. There's 32 NFL coaches in the world. Mm-hmm. What are we at, 9 billion now people in the world?
And there's change on the way to 9,
Yeah. So there's not a big pool of people. So, Britney Spears shaving her head, she didn't have the resources or understanding of, and I don't think the general public gets it. Like, what does she complain about? She's got all the money in the world. It's like, it is a big spotlight, and part of what I didn't understand at the time for myself is, back then it was blogs, the internet was just starting to get going. And if I sat down to write the blogs, I'm going to do one of two things. I'm going to either believe all the or I'm going to believe all the hype, right? And so I would sit down and read these blogs and I would get pissed. Kerr can't fight for more than 2 minutes. His first fights have been blah, 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 blah.
Do 11-0.
Yeah. It's just one of those where there's so many haters out there. And it, what you figure out, what I figured out, I can't please everybody, that I have to live to the truest extent of what I believe is right. And you're going to have your haters regardless. You're going to have your, fan. It's just one of those where it's like, at the end of the day, I have to do what I feel is my truest self, right? That I have to, if I'm going to say something, I'm going to say something. If it's controversial, it's controversial. I'm not trying to be divisive. I'm not trying to be this, that, and the other. I'm just being me. If people can't accept me, they can't accept me. And I think that's the discovery that I had about myself is that when you're in that position, you're trying to live your life how society views you. You know, they're like this very narrow corridor of like, you know, you have to be this, you have to be Britney Spears, a pop star, the pop tart, or whatever the situation is. And it's a miserable existence when you're living your life for the idea of what somebody thinks you are instead of who you are.
Really well said. Yeah, really well said. I think a normal person has a hard time understanding that, and you know, if you could put that anchor in their head a little bit better, is like it's real easy to be a critic. Even when I watch the fights now, and I have a decent level of fighting proficiency. I'm not a pro fighter. I'm not going to be a pro fighter. I could probably hold my own with a normal guy.
Oh, I hope so.
I think I'd be okay.
You built like a tank, man. You'd be okay. You'd be okay.
You sat in on training a little bit last night, and I think I'll do okay. But you know, even when I watch the fights, I go to quite a few of the UFC events, and it's real easy to sit there and be, oh, you just do this. Oh, just do it. Different when you're in, 23 minutes into a championship fight, huh?
Oh my gosh, man!
Probably different. So it's real easy to be a critic.
Yeah, it's super easy
I always
to be a
remind
critic.
myself of that.
Yeah.
It's like it's real easy to be a critic when you're sitting there and you're comfortable and you're watching something happen. Versus, I will be the guy in there that's out of breath 8 minutes ago.
Yeah, and still going.
Yeah.
And still going. You know, part of that. I learned early on, like I would run into somebody and they go, oh, nice to meet you. Da-da-da. I've done, this local thing at my, they'd say, okay, I'm a fighter. I've done this local thing. Da-da-da. Not bragging about it, just to have a kind of common ground. Mm-hmm. And my whole perspective for anybody that does that, hats off to you, bud. I mean, you have the nuts to get up and regardless of what it is, to go in the ring and fight, even though it's a local thing. But because that's the type of thing where, he might not have reached, the UFC, but it takes a certain amount of guts to do that. Mm-hmm. And so that's one. And two is that because somebody's willing to get in the octagon or ring or whatever it is, I'm the least critical. I might go, oh shit, I did this hold or that hold or this. But you're right, 23 minutes into it, fuck, and your brain is not thinking clearly, man. It's like being oxygen deprived, right? Hypoxia.
I think it's a valuable point to make to the public, though. It's like there's a reason critics don't get paid much.
No, they don't.
There's a reason critics don't get paid much. They're not making a very valuable contribution. And
no,
if you think it's easy, that's great. You should go try it. You should go do it. And I think psychologically, I think the number one thing a hater hates is themselves. They're not mad at me, and they're not mad at you. The number one thing a hater hates is himself.
Yeah.
It's usually a guy.
Yeah.
So the number one thing a hater hates is himself, and that if they could do better, they'd be doing it.
Oh, that's well said too. Because it's easy to be critical of something that you have no capacity to do, or willingness to do.
A real stupid one that I hear on occasion is somebody say, you don't look like a very successful business guy. You don't even wear a suit. And I think to myself, well, I haven't had a job for 25 years. Why the f would I wear a suit? I only built my own business.
Why would you just start now?
There's plaques all over here. $1 million, $10 million, 25, 50 million. So, people come to me. My clients are people who do wear suits. Right? They want to have the financial independence to never wear a suit
again, right?
They don't want to be a lawyer anymore. They don't want to show up to their consulting job, their investment banking job. So I think that's a humorous
Oh
one.
my God, that's funny because the like in Arizona, I've gone to these business events, right? And in the business event, it's not the guy in the 3-piece suit; it's the guy in the sandals and the Tommy Bahama shirt and the shorts, and I'm going, oh, that's the guy. That's the guy.
Yeah.
Because it's one where it's like he doesn't have to impress somebody else. Like he's there.
A guy that was a business mentor to me that he was at the time he's running a publicly traded company. He's the founder of the company, CEO of the company, and it's worth over $2 billion at the time.
Wow.
And, he'd run around. His favorite shirt that I'd see him with all the time, he'd have a brown sweater with a hole in it. There's a hole about the size of a quarter in his sweater over here.
Yeah.
He wear like an Iron Man watch. And I seen him with nice Rolexes different times too. I seen him in tuxedos with Rolexes and looking, more dressed up. But, his day-to-day attire was some nondescript shitty shoes and some jeans and a sweater with a hole in it. That's kind of who the guy was. Really, And that made a lot of sense. Any question that I had left about, I like to wear jeans and a T-shirt. I meet 3 U.S. presidents wearing jeans and a T-shirt. I talk to plenty of rich people or famous people or made a lot of money.
T-shirts,
That's what I wear. And I don't give a shit if anybody likes it or not. I'm not doing it for them.
No, that's the point.
That's what you said earlier.
That's the point, right? You're not living your life for somebody else, right? You've carved out this existence for yourself, and it's your existence. And you know what? There's no shame in that. There's no nothing. You're being authentically you, and that's sometimes the hard part when the public light shined on you a little bit. Is that you start changing? I changed all these little things in me, and it got away from me, right? Like who I am at the core. I'm honest. Forthright. I tell the truth. I'm emotional. I wear them on my sleeves. There's a lot of things about me where I look at it going, wow, like sometimes it's a hard spot to be in, but it's who I am,
They don't make movies about people that are very inauthentic, you got to be a unique character. And I say this not only as a joke, but also as a sincere point to someone watching this. Is that, the thing that's valuable and special about you is that unique authenticity of, a guy who lived his life the way he wanted to. Everybody made some bad decisions once in a while.
Yeah.
You learn from that and you make a better decision later. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing for anybody. That I spent time with Kurt Angle and done several. We did public speaking things together. He's been over here with me, etc. He's got one of those type of stories as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Great guy.
You know what? I'll do this privately. I'll send you a copy of this letter that Kurt wrote to my mom. My mom had passed away. So in 1996, Kurt and I competed against each other for years. In 93, 94, I beat him off the U.S. national freestyle team. And then in 95, he beat me. And then he goes on to win the Olympics. Well, he won the Worlds in 95, won the Olympics in 96. But anyways, my mother was diagnosed with terminal cancer in 1996. We watched him win the gold medal. My mom was so anxious to get in touch with him just to say congratulations, but he's so busy. So he writes my mom a letter. And the letter gets there. It's this incredible, I ran into Kurt at WrestleMania in Philadelphia. It's been a minute since I've seen him, man. He's incredible story. Incredible, really just a solid, like we're talking about, just solid, solid people, man.
It's a brief story about him, and I'll bring it back to you, but we were together half a year ago, and I was in a room with, we were in my penthouse. He did a speaking event with me in Las Vegas. So I was in the room with Kurt Angle, Frank Mir, and Henry Hooft and I. And Kurt made a comment, which was supposed to be a compliment. He said, some of my friends in Hollywood, they say a lot of nice things about you. And I said, really? And it was kind of a peculiar comment.
Yeah.
And I said, well, do you mind if I ask, who that is? And he says, so and so and so and so. And I said, oh, interesting. And I said, I really don't spend time with Hollywood people anymore. I used to in the past. I go to Playboy Mansion parties, and I knew a lot of people in entertainment out there. And I said, I don't like to spend time with entertainers much. I think they're mostly full of shit. And he was kind of a little bit like, and I didn't mean it as an insult, or I didn't mean it as a negative thing. I just meant it as a sincere comment that I think a lot of those people, they're actors.
Yeah.
And that's what I said. That when I seen his response, and I'm like, oh, he didn't take that the way that I meant it. And I explained, I said, well, these guys are actors. They pretend. I said, look at the people in the room with us. I said, you won a fucking gold medal with a broken neck. You didn't pretend. You won an Olympic gold medal.
Yeah.
Well, your neck was broken.
Yeah.
And then you had an amazing career after that as well.
Oh gosh, yeah.
So Frank Mir standing in the room and said, you got multi-time heavyweight champion at UFC, his most submissions in heavyweight history over there. Henry Hoof, is 23, 24-time kickboxing champion. And, I did very well in business, a different area, but none of us are actors or pretenders. We all did this.
Real. Yeah.
And then, then I saw the look on his face. He didn't say much about it, but he's like, oh, and like he really understood where my perspective was. And, you're one of those people as well. Like you did those things. And I think that the authenticity, or bringing back that word grit, or undeniable, that you did things that nobody else was doing at that time. You're a hell of a pioneer, and you did it at the highest levels. And
I appreciate that.
Anyway, how would you understand if you didn't? You had such a unique life. How would a person understand that if they haven't done it themselves, or they have some analog in their head? So it maybe isn't going to be understood by normal people, but I think is very admirable, and a very non-traditional and difficult path to walk.
No.
And it ain't like there's a lot of money at that time in that sport.
Gosh, no.
There's so many easier ways to make money than being a pro fighter. So,
I mean, there are buckets of easier ways to make it. And back then, because again, we go to drive. Like, what's driving you to do this, right? Like, and it was almost unexplainable at the time. Just this, this is what I want to be the best at. I can't explain why, but this is what's driving me. This is what gets me up at 6 a.m. This is what, has me doing this training session and this training session and diet and this. And, so it's just interesting when you get that fire in you, to be able to continue to move forward,
What would you say to somebody out there that, there's some young man watching this is, in his teens, in his 20s, maybe in his 30s, and you're thinking, to say it in my authentic ways, you've been kind of knows he hasn't been living up to his real potential. And maybe you're doing really good, maybe you're doing way above average, but you're not really living up to your true potential. You're not being great in the way that you could be. What would you say to somebody like that to help them make a decision that, greatness is not for everybody.
No.
In a unique life, it's not for everybody. Most people are just going to do average and kind of float around in life, but bounce around from pillow to pillow. I call them like a jellyfish. I think of it like a little jellyfish, like a sea creature that just doesn't have much spine or structure or firmness, just kind of floating around wherever the current takes them. How would you help somebody make a decision if they're going to be a little floaty sea creature, or maybe a shark or a scary monster of some kind, that if they're put in a tough situation, they're likely to come out on top?
The one thing that I completely understand about myself is regret is it is like, not taking advantage of every opportunity when that opportunity is there. Because there's, through my life, there's been a bunch of stuff where, I look back and I try not to have that regret, but there's some things I regret. It's inevitable. But when you regret not reaching your potential, or you regret not doing everything you can in your life to better it, and again, it's bettering it not just for myself. It's bettering it because I can have this, everyone around me gets a little bit better. It's not just this individual pursuit. And, I've lived in regret where I've been this self-centered, self-seeking, moving forward. And, it's just miserable to look back and go, oh man, I could have done this. I could have done that. And, at this point in my life, every opportunity that comes up that allows me to either be a better person, allows me to, improve my life in this direction and that direction, I try to harness it and take advantage of it, because I don't want to live the rest of my life with any regret.
Yeah, I really love what you said, that I am a selfish person, and I don't trust anybody who says they're not selfish in some way. I literally just don't trust them. You're either stupid or lying, or perhaps both. But I like to be around people who are very motivated. Selfish isn't a bad thing. You're going to have to be somewhat selfish to do something significant. But also be aware of a bigger picture or long-term planning of, you got to do the things that would make you be selfish with your time in the sense of don't waste it with idiots.
Yes.
Don't waste your time on the wrong
yes.
things, so you can do those things
Yeah.
that make you productive, that make you better.
Yeah.
And I like to spend time with people that I have a lot of coaches, I have a lot of mentors in various areas, and a lot of people come to me for help with business that I help mentor them in entrepreneurship or finance and real estate. I like being around people that I'm learning things from, and I like being around people that are eager to learn something and make their life better. I really want to spend about 0% of my life with people that, it's really the truth. I want to spend, that's my true goal is, maybe if I spend 5 hours a week right now doing something I don't really want to, I want that to be like 3 hours a week in a couple of years. And then, maybe an hour a week long term. I want to spend about 0 time dealing with, people who are not very engaged or ambitious to even pursue their own success.
So part of it, and this just put a light bulb for me. I think selfish is misused, the term, right? Because to have the success that I had doing what I was doing, I was selfish.
You have to be.
It's the only way it happens, right? It's the only way that I'm able to accomplish what I was trying to accomplish. But in that bigger term, like you were saying, it's selfish in a way that's productive. It's not selfish in a way where, I'm, not giving love to my child or I'm not selfish in that regard, but I'm selfish in my drive in not allowing all these other things to interfere with it. No, I'm not going to do that because it interferes with what my goal is or what my intentions are, That's actually really well said.
There's a fella named Jack Welch. He passed away a few years ago. Jack Welch was the CEO of General Electric for about 30 years. For about 30 years. And, I had to talk to Jack once. I think he was 80 or 81 or so at the time. He was an old fellow with a Boston accent and kind of talked a little like a gremlin, Smart guy, great guy.
Yeah.
And he said, the problem with these millennial kids, they want to give. Give. He said, they haven't done nothing yet. He said, you got nothing to give, kid. He said, it'd be like if I show up in front of the people, I got a horse and a wagon. I roll up in front of the people with my wagon. I stand in the back. I say, it's all for you. It's all for you. But there's nothing in the wagon. So you got to do something first.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, if you just think about it more that way of the more I can make myself useful, the more I can contribute to others. And the more I can contribute to others, the easier it is for them to want to do something nice for me once in a while.
Yeah.
And I like those type of relationships. I think the only sustainable relationships have to be long-term and mutually beneficial, where both people are benefiting from each other. And for that to be true, like you got to be making yourself better and better and better, so you have more to contribute. And other people. Funny thing about humans, the more I've been able to do for them, it's easier and easier for them to do little things for me once in a while. So it makes your life a lot easier.
It does. I mean, that's that little bit of reciprocation. It's and part of what I understand about myself is that anytime I do something for somebody, it's without an expectation, right, of anything. I'm doing it because I can, and I've learned through my process of like doing those little things without a huge expectation. It allows me to actually operate in a space where, if I do something for you and I expect something in return, for me, that's one where I get in trouble because it builds a bunch of resentment in me and all this other stuff. So I'm able to just, hey, you know what? You want me to show you how to do takedowns, leg kicks? Gotcha. Not a problem. Zero expectations, right?
Well, I don't disagree with what you're saying, and I just a caveat to that there has to be a good screening process before there has to be a good screening process. And after we get past that screening process,
then we're good. Right?
So
that's absolutely true. Because what I was talking about earlier is that inner circle, right? That little circle of people that you can actually trust, that that are genuine people that you can trust that are in that little circle. It's not.
I know if I spend time with somebody, it's a goal of mine to try to help that person and make their life better. And I mean that very sincerely.
Yes.
If I spend time with somebody, I don't want to spend time with somebody that I don't feel that way about. That I'd be like, all right, what could I do to help that person? That said, only a dumbass spends his time with a bunch of losers that aren't even trying to help themselves. That topic came up a couple times in our chat today.
Yeah,
But,
absolutely.
if you want people to help you, you got to want to help yourself first. You ain't got time to show a single leg and double leg and this kick and that kick, and you don't have time to share your wisdom and the limited time in your life with somebody who's not even serious about
doing absolutely.
I think that part's very important, and I totally agree with what you said after that screening process.
100%. I mean, it's just, and again, this is the little. I always say the devil's in the details, right? It's like, yeah, I have my inner circle of friends, and if they go, hey, if my buddy says, hey, come out to California, I need you for X, Y, and Z, or this, that, and the other, I'm more than willing to give my time, for that person that's been in my life that I know genuinely, because it gets murky, man. Especially when we talk about fame, right? Imagine how many people, when you're famous, are hang-ons and just want something with contributing nothing to you, and that actually it's interesting because once my mixed martial arts career started tapering off, my little circle, it like dried up, right? And I was like, holy man, I didn't really have much of a vetting process.
You know who your friends are.
Oh my God, man. It's like, I end up with like a couple and I'm like, they're still my friends to this day. And it's like, oh man, so, those are harder lessons I've learned. So thank you for the clarification.
A peculiar thing, or kind of a sad thing about fighters too, is I have some friends here that've been coaches and mentors to me in MMA, and it's such a vulnerable thing. They lose a fight or they lose a couple of fights, and they don't have the same attention. Or there's a lot of fair weather fans in sports in general. There's certainly in that sport. And I had one. I obviously I'm not going to say the guy's name, but the guy is a world champion, lost a couple of fights, and he says, hey, do you still want me to come over?
Oh my God!
Yeah.
Wow.
And being the kind-hearted, nice guy that I am, he texted me that, and I say, hey, asshole, you're on the schedule. You better be here. and you understand what that means.
Yeah.
Hey, asshole, you're on the schedule. You better fucking be here. So probably he's thank you. And when you see me in person, he's like,
absolutely.
I said, I don't want fair weather friends. I'm not a fair weather friend. Like, there's still plenty of things that we can help each other with and learn from each other. If you win a bunch of fights or you lose a couple of fights, that's life, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
If I have a couple of bad days in the stock market, we're not friends anymore.
Yeah,
How does it work? What's the expectation?
Yeah, it's like somebody looking at your bank balance. Oh, yeah, we can't be friends anymore. It's like, that's what it is. Yeah.
It's the truth.
Yeah.
If I have a bad month in the stock market, then we're not friends or something. Like, that wasn't my friend anyway.
Yeah,
I don't treat people that way, and I don't want people to treat me that way. So, I think it's important to, have those mindsets. So, maybe just last couple bullet points of like, and I think a great topic that's emerged in our chat is kind of living an authentic life.
Yeah,
living the way you want to, and I think one of the nicest compliments I've received in some years is. I was on stage with Rich Franklin. We were chatting with a group of my clients, and had a conference room full of people. And Rich made just a random comment. He said, I've been all over the world. I met a lot of interesting people. He said, I don't know that I've ever met anybody that spends more of his time doing exactly what he wants than what Derek does.
Wow.
And I thought that was, I thought my brain flashed back to like, I was like 15, 16, and I had a thought like that in my head of like, I'm not supposed to be a normal person. I don't want to get along with the normal people. I don't want to fit in with these people. I'm going to go do whatever it takes to build a life that I'm going to be pleased with and happy with.
Yeah.
And I had that thought when I was a teenage boy.
Wow.
And I did that, and I thought that was it was maybe a lot more emotional to me than he meant it to be, or just a random comment to him.
Yeah.
But I thought that was very intentional, and it only took me 27 years in between.
That's
So
all right.
it only took me a quarter century to get from there to there.
You know, that's the journey.
I think that's you know,
Yeah.
you're a great exemplification of that. As you're a guy that again was a major pioneer in a sport, did things at the highest level, were an inspiration to many other people. One of my wrestling coaches came when we talked on the phone a while ago, and he was here, and he's like, "Oh, I had a poster of that guy on my wall when I was a kid."
man.
You know?
Yeah.
So you really were an inspiration
I-
to a lot of people.
I-
Then you know, are about to be again on a large scale.
I appreciate that, Derek, and it's, you know, part of the you know, the core of what it is, you know, is just I've tried to be authentic, you know, to myself and everything going forward, and a lot of that during that time period, it was tough navigating all that, you know, but at the end of the day, you know, those moments where, you know, somebody's got a poster of me on the wall and stuff, those are the things that, you know, I cherish the most. Because, you know, if you went to Japan, I would have these signings, you know, like I would stay there until the very last person. Didn't matter if it was 9 hours, 5 hours. It just didn't matter, because that was the important part, is that connection, right? Because that's who I am, right? And it's one of those things where, you know, like Rich Franklin saying what he said about you're living your most authentic life I'm doing what I want to do. You know, regardless of the time it took to build it, you're doing what you
It
know,
was easy, just overnight.
just overnight. You know, and been in the microchip, you know, overnight. You know, no, that's, you know, the incredible part is anything that I have found in my life that is worthwhile is the pursuit that has taken everything for me to put in it. You know.
Man, you've been a high-level wrestling champion, you're ADCC champion 4 times, yeah?
4 times.
4-time
yeah.
ADCC champ, UFC champ. You know, there's only 110 or so UFC champs.
Oh, I never
all these years
realized
later.
that.
Think about it. In every weight division, male and female, all the weight divisions. I mean, don't just think about it. You could do the research. There's only about 110 UFC
Wow.
champions ever. There's so few of those that I think that's an amazing accomplishment. I feel honored that I met half of them. You know, I've done
Yeah. Oh
interviews
my
with about
gosh.
half of them.
You got to have a roster of, you know, people that you've been able to be in contact with at this. I mean, they're high achievers. You know,
Tremendous respect for what you guys have done. You know, maybe last question that I've asked a lot of champions from various sports, Olympic athletes and some football players and all athletes from a lot of different sports, plenty of fighters. You ever see anybody with, you know, one of those shiny belts or an Olympic medal or Super Bowl ring? You ever see anybody like that, their hands held high and that universal sign of victory? You ever see anybody like that didn't have a good mentor or a good coach to help them in the right direction?
No. And, you know, especially, you know, I know that the only way that I got to the level that I got to was a mentor. I had somebody literally, I think we were talking about last night, they flattened my learning curve, right? And so, because otherwise, you know, it's such a steep learning curve to understand all the nuances, you know.
You know, I've asked 250, you know, champion level athletes. Never once did somebody say, "Oh no, you just figure it out by myself."
It doesn't work that way.
Maybe last thought that, what would you tell somebody here that's like, "Oh, I'm going to figure it out by myself. I'm going to be really successful, and I'm going to figure it out by myself."
Man. It is a much easier road moving forward when you have the ability to learn from somebody, because that person you're learning from, they've made the mistakes. Mm-hmm. They've done the things, they've learned the lessons, to be able to be in the position they're in to go, hey, you know, you don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. You want to concentrate your energy and effort here. Mm-hmm. You know, because without my mentor, you know, there's absolutely no way, all the way up to where Boss Rutan was my coach. My wrestling mentor was a guy named Chris Campbell. You know, he's an Olympic bronze medalist, made the 1980 Olympic team. Everything that he accomplished, I just followed in the footsteps behind him in the path that I wanted to go. And it was a hell of a lot easier,
If your goals are so small that you could possibly accomplish them by yourself, you need bigger goals.
Yes.
You need bigger goals.
Absolutely.
So, hey, thank you very much for making the time,
man.
taking the trip over here to come see me, to chat with them, and big respect for what you've done. I'm excited to see your movie.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
And I'm a little inspired myself today to think about, and I hope that you feel that as well. Like, live your life in an authentic way. If you do what everybody else does, I don't think a person can be successful doing average shit. There's
No.
any measure of success. You're not going to have a lot of money. You're not going to be well respected. Yeah, you have to live your life in an authentic way. There's a lot of pressure for you to follow the rules and follow these other sheep and be a little jellyfish, a little floaty sea creature, or a pillow hopper.
A pillow hopper, right?
You're not going to do anything that way.
Yeah.
You're not going to feel good about yourself. You're not going to be respected by anybody else who's respectable. Live your life your way. Live your life your way. Get good mentors, get good teachers to help you accomplish your goals, but make sure they're your goals. And then you can work relentlessly to do that. And it's hard to work hard on somebody else's goals. Make sure they're your goals. Get good mentors. Get good teachers. Thank you very much for being an exemplification of that sort of lifestyle. Big respect, Mark. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me, Mark.
Where do they find you on social media?
Social media, on Instagram, I'm Mark Kerr, TSM, The Smashing Machine. And Facebook, I have a fan page, The Smashing Machine, that's just coming active. And, if they reach out on social media, I'll get back to you, I promise. And then my website's Mark Kerr, I got my name back. So www.markkerr.com.
Kerr. Kerr,
Yes.
Kerr.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, man.
All right, you got it, bud.
You watch this video all the way through, and that tells me you're dedicated to learning more and earning far above average outcomes in your life. Congratulations for that. But now it's time to take action. If you could have earned those results by yourself, you would have done it already. My head coach has opened up a few spots on his high-demand calendar for an in-person, one-on-one strategy session to help you. On this call, we'll give you the pragmatic advice that you can implement tonight to get laser-focused on the right metrics and leave mediocrity far behind in your past. Click that link right now in the description below and apply for your call immediately. Do it now.